Hello there and welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers, the mod set with over 20 planets, over 30 science packs and over 100 different mods all squeezed in there making a mess of things. And today I'm going to talk about getting the oil set up on Norvis, and there have been a couple of interesting things to note along here. Like for example, I've been using quite a lot of the gold pipes because I had a load left over from Lignumis and they were just taking up space in my inventory, so I thought why not, and so they look a little bit interesting and a little bit sort of messy and with some patterns there. And that's just passing the oil down over here to a fairly standard setup. Now I did initially set this up to be using the basic oil processing, so it was just kicking out petroleum gas, but then as soon as we'd done the research for it, I've upgraded it to advanced processing because you get a lot more oil out per oil in. So you put it, the amount of crude oil you put in versus the amount of petroleum gas you get out. And also at some point we're going to need the light oil and the heavy oil as well. So it makes sense to try and get all of that stuff up and flowing. That's running decently well. So we've got all the pump jacks up here pulling it out, and we've got a nice full pipe along here. That is basically full, so that's going really well. I'd had to pull in some water for this, and this is in a slightly unfortunate place. I did the traditional lazy thing of putting in my oil processing basically almost on top of the first oil patch that we started using. So this one's fairly close to the main factory. There is another one up here, but that's in dangerous territory. There is one down here, which again is a little bit dangerous, not quite as dangerous as the other one, but we don't have a wall down here at the bottom, which is probably going to cause us issues at some point. But we'll get back to that in another video. And yeah, there aren't really any other good oil patches. There is just that one that one's decently close. I have no complaints about that. But once we deplete that one, we're going to have to think about going up over to here. But then over here, there's three of them in quite close proximity. So if we can go over and make this sort of area safe, then there's a huge amount of oil. That looks like there's more than 20 million oil available over there, which is 5 times what we've got available here. So yeah, that's going to be very worth doing if we can. Although I note that the resource tracker is saying there's 4.2 million ore, and the oil patch is saying there's 1159%. So that suggests that the oil is doing the standard Factorio thing of being an infinite supply. It's just going to get very, very slow. But this thing has given us a number. So I don't know. I don't know how those are going to link together, but we shall see. We shall deal with that as it goes. And I suspect that by the time we need more oil, we will have found a way to get some more oil and expanded our world out a little bit. But anyway, yes, I was saying, so I built next to the crude oil patch there, and that meant I needed to run water from somewhere. And well, there's a water patch down here, there's one over here, one over here, one over here. They're also known as lakes water patches, I suppose, but I decided this one was probably the closest and easiest one to get to. So yes, there is a very, very long underground pipe running across here, and then well, you can see the dotted pink line showing where the pipes are going, and eventually they come in down here, allowing me to do the oil processing. I initially then started setting up the next stage, the cracking, with pumps along here that were being controlled through the circuit network. But somebody in the stream chat was then kind enough to remind me that no, I'm playing Factorio 2, and that means that I can just go in here and I can set the enable-disable values on the machines themselves. So you can see this one will run whenever this goes over 20,000 like that, and then as soon as we use up some of that heavy oil, it'll stop again. So the idea behind this is that you process away with the crude oil here until you've got, and you get out an amount of heavy, light and petroleum gas. Then you use your cracking recipes. This one takes it from heavy to light, this one takes it from light to petroleum gas, and you balance all of those to make sure that you always have an amount of each one available. So at the moment, this petroleum gas tank over here is basically full, and that means that these machines along here can't run because there's nowhere to put the petroleum gas that they produce. However, we can then gradually use up the excess light oil and heavy oil and turn it down eventually into the petroleum gas, and then once we've used enough of that up, there'll be room for all of this to then pump some more of all of the different types of oil out, and it just keeps itself nice and balanced. So yeah, we've got it set here to crack whenever there's more than 20,000 heavy oil, that cracks down into light, and then down here whenever there's more than 20,000 light oil, it'll crack it down into petroleum gas, which can then be passed on. So yeah, we don't actually need petroleum gas, light oil or heavy oil in those particular forms though. There's a little bit more to it than that. So the next thing is to be producing the sulfur down here, which requires an input of petroleum gas and an input of that water that we were gathering earlier. And that's working much as you'd expect. It's going quite nicely, and we've got a steady stream of sulfur coming out. I expect the number of machines here to be able to completely fill a yellow belt, which is what they're doing. They have easily filled a yellow belt because we've got some excess. There seems to be, oh, but there's a piece of pipe missing over here, so that should be in there to allow this machine to run. But yes, if that was there, then they would be able to completely fill a yellow belt, even if it was being used at full speed at the other end of it. So that's good, and it means, but if we ever needed any more, then it'd be put in another set of those machines and upgrade it to a red belt, or possibly to 2 yellow belts. Either would work. The plastic was a little bit more complicated, because plastic also requires coal, or actually, in this mod set, it requires pulverized coal. So I'm bringing in a stream of coal, and the coal was fairly easy, because we already had a coal mine up here that's bringing down lots and lots of coal right past where I needed it. So it was simple enough to stick in a splitter that you can just about see behind that tree that's pulling off the coal and passing it over through this way up here to be pulverized. The pulverization is fine, however, like the pulverization steps we were talking about before for the in the last video for the iron and the copper, sometimes it doesn't quite work and you get a piece of coal coming back out again. That's fine. I just put in a splitter here which brings it back down, puts it back into the input, and I've deliberately got this going in on the top side of the belt, or the starboard side of the belt, which means it'll then come in along the starboard side here, and it's prioritizing this input. So we should never get this backing up because, well, the lazy inserters along here will always take from the near side of the belt if they can, and this will always be putting it onto the near side of the belt, so we'll be using this up by priority. I didn't want to just put it in and have the belt going straight in like that, because then any coal that comes along the port side of the belt would go through here, down on this side, and it would come and end up on the far side as it comes along here. And potentially, if we're not using up large quantities of it, which we don't seem to be, then it could end up jamming up and blocking up all the way along here. Now, that hasn't actually been a problem, because we're using so little plastic at the moment that there's only really one side of this belt flowing, but it's good to make sure about that anyway. Another thing that I then realised, much to my horror, was that yes, we're producing stone from this crushing process as well. So and I hadn't dealt with that, so I was feeding stone up through and into the system along here, so I had to do a little bit of tidying. But now there is an additional belt that is taking the stone away, flows down over here, and then that joins in with this stone belt that's coming from a stone mine over here somewhere. So at the moment it's fairly easy. I can just tap off the coal belt coming here, I can feed back into the stone belt. All these belts are in reasonably sensible and convenient places. Once we start to expand further and have a more train-based system, all of these weird side products are going to be a little bit more awkward, and we're going to have to work out how we want to deal with them. So that's going to be an interesting one to think about in the future. And then once again, this is all balanced to give me a full belt of the crushed coal coming through here and a full belt of plastic coming out here if it's all required. This one doesn't require water, so there's only the one pipe going along here, but it does require inserters on both sides for inserting and exerting. So it's a little bit more fiddly with getting all the belts and the pipes and the inserters all in the right place. There are many ways to do this. This is the one I chose. It works quite nicely. I'm pretty happy with it. Another thing I should probably mention while I'm here is another advantage of the playing Factorio 2.0 is that you have the ability now to flip these fluid handling buildings, so like that. You see, so it's swapping over the two inputs, and that means I was able to put water to water and then gas to gas and alternate back and forth as we go along here, and that makes the pipe work a lot simpler. If you don't have that, then you end up having to do something like this. If you want to, assuming you want to put the machines right next to each other, you end up having to sort of maybe run this one up a little bit and then across like that for each set of machines. And then with the other one, you'll need to run an underground belt up like that to go underneath the other pipe. I meant pipe, and then run your water pipe along the top there, which is a little bit more fiddly and a little bit more faff. Whereas with this system, it's a bit more compact, a bit neater. It uses a lot less pipe up, and I think it looks nicer as well. I could have moved this one row down and used underground pipe. So, for example, I could have run that from there to there to there, and so on, and then got rid of all this pipe along the top, and that would have worked in exactly the same way. It might have been slightly more compact and neater. Yeah, maybe it would have been better, but I had plenty of space to play with over here, so I wasn't too worried about trying to condense it down and make it as compact as possible. Which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comments. And then finally on the bottom, I started using some of the heavy oil for producing lube, and we've got one machine making lube, and so far that has been plenty. There's plenty of space here if we need to put more machines in. We can put in as many as we want. You've got quite high throughput on these pipes, but yeah, one machine so far has been absolutely sufficient. We don't seem to need very much lube. So that gave me a belt of sulfur and a belt of plastic, which I just sort of wound down along with all of the other belts that are then becoming part of the bus down here. And we've done quite a good job of respecting the sanctity of the bus and making sure we keep all of our lanes nice and split out. So you can see up here we've got 3, well, technically potentially 4 lanes of wood stuff. There's a steel belt doing something atrocious around here, but there is actually room to go past it with a yellow underground there, so it's not too bad. The problem is if you try and build things too close together, then you run out of space, and that's why this has happened like this. Whose fault was this? Oh, it was Tristan's fault. Okay, I don't know who I was actually expecting it to be mine, because usually when something weird happens, it's usually me. So yes, we've got room up here for all of the woodenish things, and that includes coal apparently. Then copper and iron, then various circuits, and apparently green science. And I don't know what's taking up the other row on this level of the bus. Okay, we've got motors over here. Fine, that makes sense. And then various stony products, gears, metals, more things. But you can see we've always got the pattern of 4 belts of stuff, and then 2 spaces for the underground belts to go in, another 4 belts, 2 spaces, and so on, all the way down. And we've managed to keep that going very, very well. And this gives you space to do a little bit of shenanigans in the middle if you need to. You can run pylons along it. You can put lights in there. But basically, the most important part of it is it means it's really, really easy to pass these belts all the way through when you need to. So all of these things, yes, they're all flowing merrily down the bus. We've got our sulfur, we've got our plastic, we've got our lube, all coming all the way along here. And that meant I was then able to start making more advanced things using plastic and whatnot. And so up here I put in a red circuit production facility. We've got I decided to make the green circuits for it on site. Otherwise you get into this awkward position where making red circuits suddenly just takes all of your green circuit production, and your entire factory grinds to a halt because there aren't any green circuits available anymore for anything else. So I find it's always best to have, so you do your green circuits, then you do your red circuits with its own green circuits production system, and then when you get onto blue circuits, again you produce your green circuits on site and your red circuits on site in order to produce the blue circuits. Otherwise they just all vanish, and you just end up wondering where they've gone. I made that mistake many years ago in my Angel Bob's run. I think it was the Angel Bob's run, and I've tried to learn from that ever since. So this is my what I tend to use as my standard red circuit production system. Because one machine making the copper cables can feed 6 machines making the red circuits, I like to arrange them around the outside of it like this. This has, I would say, rotational symmetry, but chat disapproved of it and said they preferred mirror symmetry. So I modified a couple of the other ones up at the top. So now this one has is that horizontal mirror symmetry? I guess it is, because the mirror would go through the middle across here, and we've got the machines arranged in these groups of 3 around the outside. To be honest, it doesn't matter. We've got all the machines around there in the right ratios, and so they're able to then pull in all of the copper to make the cables, and then the plastic and the green circuits in order to make the red circuits. Looking at this, it looks like I need to add quite a lot more red circuit production going up here, but somebody's put an ammo belt through the middle of it, so that's going to be a little bit fiddly. Maybe I'll just skip over it. Oh, but then there's a stone mine in the way, so that's also going to be very, very fiddly. We'll have to have a bit of a think about that and work out what the best way to do it is. We shall see. Having a steady stream of red circuits and, of course, sulfur meant that I was then able to start thinking about making blue science. Previously, Tristan had put the little petrol engines onto the bus. Unfortunately, it seems to be struggling a little bit with throughput, and that's down to the number of cogs that are being made. So, yeah, this all comes back to us having such a shortage of iron. If we had a lot more iron, and if we then went in and did a bit of an upgrade on the cog production system over here, as I was talking about in the previous video, then we'd have a lot more of these coming through, and well, then maybe we'd be able to actually make the engines in. I've lost them. Oh, with the engines in here, and then with that we'd then be able to make a decent supply of blue science. But you know, we have to solve one problem at a time, I guess. So yeah, as I say, that's enabling us to make the blue science, and using the rate calculator mod, I can find out that we are currently making blue science at, drumroll, 1.5 per second, and that's the same speed that we've been doing with the other ones. So one of the other things I did during the stream was upgrade all of these ones to blue assembly machines, and so going from one assembly machine to another means that obviously your ratios are going to stay exactly the same. So I didn't have to worry about any of that sort of shenanigan. There is a risk of your belt suddenly turning out to be too slow. But that wasn't the problem in this particular case. So now all of this is working wonderfully at a speed of producing 1.5 red science per second. So that's exactly the same speed. My plan was to go through and get everything to be running at the same speed. If we look over here, for example, you can see we've got 1.5 green science, and hopefully Only one grey science, so actually I should put in another few machines here. However, most of the time you tend not to be using grey science because that only gets used up for military researches, so it tends to be a little bursty, and so maybe that's okay. I don't know. I'm not sure I can really justify that. Perhaps I should put in some more buildings making the grey science. We've got 10 of them, so it's enough. Oh, no, wait, no, that's just because these haven't been upgraded. I take it all back. If we whack in an upgrade across there, then they'll probably all start running at the right speed. Yes, because they'll go from running at a speed of 0.5 to running at a speed of 0.75, which means the total number will go from 1 per second to 1.5 per second. So actually, I have got the numbers right. I'm very glad to see it. That was almost embarrassing. And so having blue science available meant we were then able to start researching other exciting things. So we've now got some low-density structures being made. I don't think we're actually using them for anything yet, which is probably a good thing, because as soon as we turn this on to full speed, all of the copper disappears, and to be honest, so does most of the steel. So we've got the capability to make low-density structures, at least at a rate. It's not a particularly fast rate, but we can at least make some of them. But yeah, when we do, it's just going to exacerbate our supply problems quite a lot, I think. More excitingly, though, I then made a load more petrol engines, which is fine, which allowed me to make the electric engines, and that has allowed me to then start making robots. And this is the sort of the turning point. This is when Factorio kind of becomes proper Factorio. So you've got the very first stage where you're doing hand insertion of absolutely everything, and it's a little bit annoying. It's not really what we come along to play Factorio for, but it's the first stage of the game you kind of have to get through. Then you've got the stage where you're just going along and building things by hand, but you've got belts and you've got inserters and all that sort of stuff. The stage we've basically been playing through up until about now, and that's much more Factorio-y, but it's still not quite there. Although we did sort of short circuit that a little bit by having early game bots. So we started off with the nanobots. That's from these two guns over here, which I think I showed you in a previous video. And then we also had the basic personal roboport and the very basic personal robots, which are, I think, there's some in here. So we've got the copper ones and we've got the gold ones, and those were, I mean, they were functional. They worked. They allowed you to do bot stuff. It's just very slow. Now we've got roboports built, and we've got the red chest and the yellow chest. We've got the proper construction bots with proper logistics bots, and that means that now the factory can build itself. So you saw earlier I dropped down that upgrade planner over the top of the grey science over here. That's now just happened. The bots went out and did that for me, and that is so wonderful and glorious. And we can now check it again, and there we go. There's that 1.5 per second we were looking for. And it's so much easier having my little robot minions going out and doing all of these things for me, rather than having to go there and just do everything by hand. Tristan got us prepared for this by putting down upgrade planners across lots of the wooden chests and iron chests and steel chests across the bus, so that as soon as we had these available, and as soon as we had roboport coverage as well, the bots would fly out and do the upgrades, and that's why we seem to now have all of the bits and pieces we need. It looks like we still don't have a system for disposing of the lower tiers of things like assembly machines and whatever else, but you know, we'll get there gradually. Oh, some blue inserters here. Those are worth having. I'll grab that for myself. I also went along and put in roboports all the way along the bus. I was trying to line them all up nicely, which I managed to start with. So you can see we've got a nice straight line along the roboport coverage area here. And then there were a few difficulties, like this one I couldn't put there because this machine was in the way. Now actually, come to think of it, we've got better picker dollies installed. So I could do that and that and that and that and that. Oh, fine. You see what I'm getting at. We could potentially go through and move all of these things up a little bit like this to give us a little bit more space for everything we want to do, and then I can move that up into this space, and then boom, suddenly I've lined up that roboport correctly. And maybe I could do the same over here. So we've got this one is it you? Oh no, it's because I moved the other one up, so that one needed moving up. Oh no, it's this guy here. Right, okay, so this is just chests of shame. These can be we can play whatever sort of Tetris we want with these guys. There we go. Now that's in the right place. That's much better. Now there's just, I don't even, oh, this roboport down here. Now there's a bit too much stuff going on here. I mean, I could move this up, but I won't do it right now anyway. So yeah, that's much need to know. No, there's one in here that's still in the wrong place. You get the idea. A little bit of minor adjustments can be made without too much difficulty to make everything look a little bit better and a bit neater. Eventually, we'll probably move off onto a much neater grid that we set up ourselves with blueprints in advance, rather than coming in and trying to cobble them in afterwards. But you know, one step at a time. Tristan says he's also started setting up the limits on the inserters rather than on the chest. So previously we've been doing things like this, where we limit how many things get built by putting a limit on the chest. So the chest can't be filled by inserters up beyond this point, so that's why it's all highlighted in red. So we're never going to have more than 150 steel furnaces being made. This one up here, there is no limit on the chest. Instead, it is watching the Roboport network, and it says whenever there's less than 50, make some more. And the advantage of that is that it means if some of them get dumped in the chests of shame over here, then they'll get used. Then they will count towards the total number in the system, and hopefully they'll get used up before the ones that are being before we make any more with the machines over here. So it saves small amounts of resources. It means you don't end up with silly numbers of them buried in your chests of shame scattered around the base. So it should hopefully make things a lot better and a lot more sensible. Okay, I think I've got a little bit carried away from talking about oil, which was meant to be the theme of this video, but I think that's been quite a good amount to be talking about anyway. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll be back again with the next video. These are coming out every Thursday and Friday at the moment, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on anything. We'll be back for more streaming on Monday, 7:30 PM UK time as usual, and I'll be back on Wednesday as well for some more of The Last Starship, or maybe even something else if I've finished it by now. I don't know. I'm starting to build up a little bit of a buffer on these videos, so I'm not quite sure exactly when they're going to come out and what I'm going to be doing on stream. So keep an eye on the channel. There'll always be stuff happening though, and if you want to know what's coming up soon, then check out the Discord server, or just come along to chat with us if you want as well. It'd be great to have you along. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss it, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.